Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for accepting our invitation to be with us here today. Please be seated so that we could begin. We have a busy schedule today. The Prime Minister's schedule is also very busy, so please be seated. I want to thank all of you who responded to our invitation to be with us today in Sofia at this first meeting that will aim to take a look at something that happened to all of us in Central and Eastern Europe, the transition that we have had, the experience that we have in building democratic institutions of state, both the positive and the negative, the mistakes that we made and the lessons we learned in each of our respective countries in its own historical context. The purpose of this meeting today is to look back at this experience and to consider how to make use of it for the benefit of the countries that are following in our full footsteps towards democracy, the countries of North Africa and the Middle East. And before we open this conference, I would like with great pleasure to give the floor to the Prime Minister of the Republic of Bulgaria, Mr. Boyko Borisov, for an opening statement. Then we'll begin our meeting in earnest. Thank you for being here in Sofia. Okay, let's start with a minute of silence in honor of all the victims of the peaceful protests in the region. Thank you. Distinguished Secretaries General, members of Cabinet, Excellencies, distinguished members of the civil society, of course, it is my great pleasure to welcome our former president, Mr. Zheliu Zhelev. There is no such thing as a former president. Mr. President Zhelev, welcome to this forum. I would like to acknowledge and thank you all for accepting this invitation to take part in today's conference and to welcome you as our dear guests. Events in North Africa and the Middle East show clearly that the thirst for freedom, a life of dignity and justice is universal and knows no borders. There is no force that can suppress those human rights and aspirations. The 1 minute of silence in memory of all the victims, I believe that we gave a telling example of our commitment and our compassion for the people struggle for democracy. Although involving victims and difficulties, the aspiration for democracy in Northern Africa shows that the process of democracy is universal. It cannot be stifled or stopped. For many years, the world was accustomed to the idea that Arab countries cannot be ruled democratically and should choose between stable, secular, absolute authorities or fundamentalist theocracies. I believe that the Arab Spring shows that this is totally wrong. And I strongly hope that democratic processes in the region will continue in the future, because I'm convinced the ongoing changes in North Africa and the Middle East are a unique historic opportunity for the development of these countries and their democratization, which should not be missed. It is an opportunity not just for the countries in the region, but for the world and humankind. We accept the will and efforts for democratic transition in Northern Africa and the Middle East as our common responsibility, because we know from our own experience that the road to democracy is difficult. And after 20 years of transition, we can say that it cannot be successful without help and assistance from countries near and friendly, because the main burden and the serious challenges are yet to be borne by the Arab countries and their civil societies. Ladies and gentlemen, we are all aware that the European Union cannot be an oasis of democracy, calm and prosperity unless the countries of Northern Africa and the Middle East are undergoing a period of drama. It is our deep conviction that Europe cannot stand idly by, but should be committed to supporting the democratic processes in our southern neighbors. In order for this to happen in the best possible way, we must provide the necessary and adequate assistance. To that end, we need to understand what individual societies and political factors expect of us. The forum that we're opening today is suitable opportunities for us to hear the opinions of eminent representatives of the Arab countries about how they see the current and future role of the European Union in assisting change in the region. As for the Bulgarian position, it is that what is happening in the Northern Africa and the Middle East must be reviewed thoroughly, and we have to reconsider the policies of the European Union in the region. Therefore, the new European policy must be based on the following three key principles. Firstly, the European Union should apply an individual approach, taking account of the specific needs of each partner country. Secondly, in providing such assistance and cooperation, we must take into account the results in achieving the political criteria, human rights, and the supremacy of law. Third, but not in importance, the support of the European Union is necessary and valuable, but the leading role must be played by our Arab friends. One of the most important lessons of the Bulgarian transition to democracy is that change cannot be imposed from without. In this sense, the role of the European Union should amount to supporting the reforms and democratization in Northern Africa and the Middle East. This conference does not aim to provide ready-made formulas and models, but to provide a platform for exchange of ideas and experience between the countries in Central and Eastern Europe in their transition to democracy. The idea here is to give an opportunity to the representatives of Northern Africa and the Middle East to know the lessons that we have, both negative and positive. We hope that the conference will assist in the creation of contacts and the exchange of important lessons and experience with our Arab friends and neighbors. These are the key issues of the democratic development, such as the constitutional reforms, organizing and conducting open and transparent elections, forming and consolidation of democratic institutions, political parties, trade unions, and non-governmental organizations, tools for the fight against corruption and an anti-corruption environment, and reform of the judicial system. It is also extremely important that judicial system reform is conducted on time and at a high standard. This is one of the greatest lessons that we have learned, because 22 years after the onset of democracy in Bulgaria, we are still under European monitoring on account of the reform, the incomplete reform of the judicial system. There has been a lot of waste of time, a lot of golden years went to waste, and this is a matter of prestige, my Arab friends. It is below any nation's dignity to be monitored. Guaranteeing the freedom of association and the freedom of speech. I'm sure that despite the differences in a historical, cultural, and political context, our lessons in democracy, pluralism, and the civil society are a good starting point for useful exchange of experience and opinions. I want to specially acknowledge the Foreign Minister of Bulgaria, Mr. Mladenov, for organizing this conference. And I want to tell you that it is a great honor for us to have so many Arab friends, European Union ministers, embassies of the great powers, to have them with us here today. And of course, with a feeling of pride and joy, I can announce that the Secretary General of the United Nations is on a visit in Bulgaria for several days. You will have an opportunity to meet him. I believe that his presence will enable this forum to be properly reflected, to be properly remembered, and this will enable that things will happen that we all need. Once again, thank you for your kind attention. I wish you every success today. It is an honor for us as a country to have such distinguished guests in our capital city. Thank you for your attention.